We are Anchor. Stay tuned for updated real news.
Hello Anchor Daily News viewers. Today we'll bring you new developments that are overshadowed by the war but should be watched with great attention. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues unabated, important events that change the balance on the battlefield continue to take place. While both sides are mobilizing all the means at their disposal to gain strategic superiority, critical moves are taking place that will affect the course of the war. Especially the news coming in over the last 24 hours show that the intensity of the war is gradually increasing and the mobility on the front line is accelerating. When we look at today's developments, we see that the reports coming from the field are quite remarkable. Especially the statements made by the Ukrainian side claim that Russia has suffered significant losses. If these claims are true, we'll see that the Russian army has lost a significant portion of its military assets in just one day. Analyzing how these losses will affect the future of the war and what changes they will cause in the strategies of the parties will help us better understand the upcoming period. Of course, these developments are not limited to the military dimensions. It remains to be seen what kind of position Russia will take in the war and what the consequences of such losses will be for the overall course of the war. The steps taken by Ukraine in this process and how Russia will respond will be decisive for the future of the conflict. We'll now examine the details of these huge losses and the latest situation on the ground. Before moving on to our report, here's a small reminder. As the Anchor Daily News team, we strive to bring you the developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. We also read all the comments you leave on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments section. Tell us what content you'd like to see on the Anchor Daily News channel. And now let's start if you're ready. Anchor Daily News reports. As the fighting between Ukraine and Russia continues, the latest developments on the front line show that the intensity of the war is increasing. According to statements made by Ukrainian officials, the Russian army has suffered major losses over the last 24 hours. According to reports by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russia has lost 1,270 soldiers, 73 artillery pieces, 121 vehicles, and 1 combat aircraft. These losses stand out as one of the highest figures reported by Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Especially the losses in tanks and armored vehicles are remarkable. According to Ukraine's statements, 11 tanks, 17 armored vehicles, 93 vehicles and fuel tanks were destroyed. Such losses led to a major weakening in the critical military equipment that the Russian army can use in the war. The destruction of armored vehicles and tanks could slow Russia's progress in ground operations and create major logistical problems. The picture becomes even clearer when we look at Russia's total losses since the start of its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. According to Ukrainian officials, Russia has lost an estimated 630,200 personnel, destroying 8,653 tanks and rendered 18,009 artillery systems unusable since the beginning of the occupation. In addition, 369 warplanes, 24,491 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 15,033 drones have been destroyed. These figures reveal how costly the war has been for Russia. However, the accuracy of these figures is questionable. Russia does not officially declare its military losses, making it difficult to verify the losses reported by Ukraine. Military analysts say that the casualty figures announced by Ukraine and Russia are not always fully reliable, and that both sides may manipulate these figures as part of psychological warfare. In particular, the casualty figures announced by the Ukrainian side may be aimed at creating the perception that Russia is in a weakened state, while the reports published by the Russian side are generally shaped in the direction of Ukraine's failure. Therefore, it's very difficult to get complete clarity on what the actual casualties on the battlefield are. On the other hand, Ukraine's strategies throughout the war have helped to balance Russia's military superiority and even gain an advantage at times. Military aid and modern equipment provided by the West gave the Ukrainian army a significant advantage. In particular, it has increased the success of attacks targeting Russia's tanks and armored vehicles. Since the beginning of the war, Ukraine has stood out as an army that can move faster and apply flexible strategies. On the other hand, despite Russia's great military power, the prolongation of the war has put Russia in a difficult situation both militarily and economically. Russia's economic situation is deteriorating due to the international sanctions imposed since the beginning of the war. Economic sanctions imposed by the United States and the European Union have weakened Russia's war economy. Sanctions, particularly in the energy sector, have severely limited Russia's sources of income, while investment in the war industry has declined at the same rate. Russia's capacity to finance the war is shrinking every day, making it harder for its military to compensate for its losses on the ground. Destroyed tanks and armored vehicles cannot be replaced due to the embargoes, reducing Russia's capacity to sustain the war in the long term. While drawing attention to Russia's heavy losses, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also quoted American soldier and actor Audie Murphy on courage. Let me tell you what courage really is. Courage is the determination to do what you know needs to be done. Once again emphasizing the motivation behind Ukraine's resistance. Ukraine sees this war against Russia not only as a military struggle, but also as a struggle for national resistance and existence. That is why the Ukrainian people and army continue to fight despite great losses and hardships. Ukraine's resistance has resonated around the world. Western countries continue to increase their support for Ukraine, and this support seems to have changed the balance in the war. In addition to military aid, economic aid also strengthens Ukraine's resistance during the war. In particular, the military equipment provided by the United States and the European Union plays a critical role in Ukraine's strategic advantage against Russia. As a result of this support, the Ukrainian army is strengthening both militarily and psychologically. Since the beginning of the war, Ukraine has maintained a high morale and mounted a resilient defense against Russia's superior power. Military aid and modern weapons from the West have not only strengthened Ukraine's defenses, but also enabled it to launch more effective attacks against the Russian army. In conclusion, Ukraine's war against Russia is not only a military conflict, but also of great importance for international relations and economic balances. The heavy losses suffered by Russia could change the balance in the war and profoundly affect the course of the conflict in the coming period. As we continue to watch the course of the war and the strategic moves of the parties, it remains to be seen how long Ukraine's resilient struggle will last and how Russia will respond to these losses. What do you think? How long do you think Russia will be able to cope